my name is Stephen Crane. In this video, I will be continuing my ACK Fight the Dragons level editor tutorial series, and in this video I will be covering specifically the NPCs. Last video we covered enemies. NPCs are very similar to enemies, however they are not a direct threat to the player. They more have active dialogue that you can use to advance the story or explain something to the character or the player. Excuse me. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So aside from NPCs, you also have signposts, lecterns, books, and invisible NPCs. Invisible NPCs, you can make them trigger more with logic. Outside of that, there's not as much use for them, but once you get into some more complex things, they become semi-useful. So let's place a couple of these down. So we get the book, the lectern. Let's add a signpost here. And then, let's see, where should we place our NPCs? Let's place the NPCs in the house, because where else should they be? So I'm actually going to place a couple here. So as you can see, with NPCs, you have quite a selection to choose from. The NPC type is the character model for the NPC. So you can just side scroll here, and I want to say there's 12 different types. Excuse me. 12 different types of models. There might actually be 13 with a ghost. Or actually 14, because there's 2 different ghosts. But yeah, you have quite a selection to choose from, which is fairly nice. And that's just for your default NPCs. There are also enemy NPCs, where you can make several of the different enemy types that you can spawn in. There's not all of them, but you do have quite the selection. And that way you can actually interact with some of the enemies. And if you want to make it so an enemy or an NPC is first engageable, so you can talk to them, you can then turn off the NPC and turn on an enemy nearby it. So that way it effectively creates the effect of turning an NPC hostile against you. But so yeah, let's change it back to a friendly NPC. Let's have let's go with the monk. You also have like the different states for all the character models, where they're just doing different animations. So you have the default, you have the scared, where they're kind of cringing in the corner. You have the angry, where they're ready for a fight. You have sad, you have sweeping, and you have guard. Some of the NPCs don't have all of these different animations, but the majority of them do. So it's just something that you have to go through, kind of pick the model that you want, and then see if it has the stance that you want as well. So let's have the monk cowering. He's afraid. There's a bunch of monsters outside. There's a dead body. Things are happening. Also, something else you can do is you can place icons above your NPCs' heads to draw attention to them. So, say the asterisks, it might not be as important of a thing as a primary objective, but you still want to draw attention to the NPC. You can put an asterisk above their head. They have something that you kind of want to trigger them, or if you want to give a tip or something, you can always use a question mark, or if something's very crucial to the story, or you have to speak with the NPC, the exclamation mark is a good route to go, or you can just leave it blank. And then aside from that, all that's really left is the trigger events, which once again is getting more into the logic side of things, so we'll touch on that later. But then you also have the dialogue, and with the dialogue you can add as many pages as you want. I don't think I've seen a max yet, yeah. But also you don't typically want to make NPCs talk for too long. But so yeah, you can fill out pages of dialogue. Each page does have a character limit. It's 140 characters, and anything you say through an NPC is all capitals, regardless of how you enter it. So you can spell things out in just lowercase by clicking on the edit, selecting it, and then using your keyboard. Just say scared. As you can see, it's grammatically correct in how I spelled out the words. Started with a capital, use lowercase through the rest of it. Once I save it, it goes all capitals. It doesn't matter how you enter it, it's always going to be capitals. So you can do all lowercase, you can be grammatically sloppy when it comes to case sensitive as you want, because it's just going to make it all capitals. But yeah, so you can make it so it's multiple pages. So you can do the plus icon just adds a page, the X icon removes a page. If you want to, say you've created a couple and you want to go back and edit one, you can use the bumpers on your controller or gamepad to scroll between them. So left bumper it decreases, right bumper increases the dialogue boxes. So let's fill out a couple more of these. So now we've got 4 dialogue boxes, so when you talk to him, the first thing that will show up will be the first dialogue. When you press A to proceed with the dialogue, it'll go to the next and the next until you've gone through all the dialogues, and then you can always talk to him again unless you turn him off through logic. Then it'll remove him and you won't be able to interact with him, but if you make him reappear, you'll be able to interact with him once again, but it will be the same dialogue. So the thing is if you want to make the same NPC but in a different stance or have different dialogue, you actually have to make multiple instances of him. So let's do that with our second one. There is the monk. Let's have him sweeping. And then let's have him say so pretty much one will be a before and one will be an after, so let's throw an exclamation mark. Because we want the player to go and deal with them. Another way to make sure that people know that it is the same NPC is you are able to name all the NPCs as well as enemies. It was something I didn't really go over in the last one. The top dialogue box is actually the name, and that will appear above their head when you're within view of them. So let's name this monk. Let's call him Friar Tuck, because everybody loves him, right? So now all I have to do is give him the same name, and it creates the illusion that it is actually the same exact NPC when it is actually a separate one. So let's throw an asterisk over his head, because he's going to reward you when we get into the logic. So now we have our 2 NPCs. Other than that, let's quickly go over some of the sign stuff. So all the signs is a single dialogue box. It's 140 character limit. Only a single page. Let's say this is Friar Tuck's home. So now when you interact with the sign, it will say Friar Tuck's home. So then, much like with the sign, you have uh, dialogue boxes for the books and the lectern, which the lectern is just a book on a pedestal. However, it is much more like the NPC dialogue, where you can make multiple pages of dialogue, where the sign is only a single page of dialogue. So I won't worry about adding anything to these. I just wanted to show you that it is much like the standard NPC, where you can have multiple pages of dialogue versus just the single. So now let's hop into our playtest here. And as you can see, like, these are closed. Typically when you interact with them, what they'll do is they'll open up, and then when you finish, they'll close once again. So let's go inside here, and we've got our two NPCs here. Since we haven't used logic, they're both active, where typically we would have one turned on, where they're shown, and the other turned off. And then once we complete a task, we would switch that, so we would turn the one that's on off and turn the one that's off on, which once again we'll cover in a later tutorial. So you talk to him, so scared, can you help me? They killed that lady outside, but I have them locked up in that fence. So once you talk to them, any of the marks that you have above their head will go away, so it won't keep drawing the player back to the same one. However, you can talk to him and he has the same dialogue until you hide him, but once again, it's using logic. So then the alternative one is, thank you so much for taking care of the dead. And that's all we gave them, so that's all they say. Once again, you can talk to them multiple times. They just say the same thing over and over again. And that's pretty much it for the NPCs. They're a great story device. You can use them to effectively tell the player what they're supposed to do, give them hints, effectively give them quests to do. And yeah, they're a great tool for advancing story, as well as making sure that the player interacts with your environment and engages with your world. So thank you for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. In the next video, we will be covering the VFX and the music, so it shouldn't be too long. I'm sorry I've been making these go a little bit long. There's a lot to cover, and I just want to make sure that you guys get the full extent of these tools and kind of what they are capable of, and what you can do with them. So thanks again for watching. I hope once again that this was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.